about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see the world in action, what we can be, life with no distractions. We'll get away, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free with me. Let's go, let's be free with Not looking back, eyes on the freeway, Bonnie and Clyde, a classic cliche. We're on the run, this is what we waited for. Take my hand, we'll make it somehow. We can't miss out. I'm done living life with the lights out, die with my own doubts. Be free.
Good evening, everyone, he says, switching his audio down so he can't hear himself 5 seconds later. It's Jim here at Tutor to You. So it's been a bit chaotic. Emily and Rubina are with us tonight. I've had a very, very busy teaching day, and Rubina has just arrived in the house for tonight's live revision session. So many thanks for joining us. I'm going to pass it over to you two very shortly because I know we've got a lot to get through in 30 minutes or so on delegated legislation. That's as much as I know, so I'm not going to be much help. But I'll pass on to the two experts in the room who can guide us through the session. If you're joining us live, welcome. I can see lots of students are tonight, which is fantastic. So use the live chat to have a go at the activities and ask any questions as we go. If there's something you're not sure of, Rubina and Emily will be able to answer your questions as we go. And if you're joining us on catch-up and replay, obviously no live chat, but you'll be able to use the recording, give yourself a bit more time. So fantastic stuff. Are we good to go, Rubina? Emily, sorry, I should have said hello to you.
Hello.
Who's starting the session tonight? Who's it going to be?
Rubina.
Yeah, I'm doing the first half.
Well, that's a relief that you're here then. That's fantastic.
Just
well done.
Trying to find the headphones, Jim.
Well, we're good to go. Looking forward to the session. So all the best, everyone. I'll see you in about half an hour.
Yeah, so welcome everyone. So as Jim said, this is just going to be a 30-minute blast on delegated legislation, the types, the controls. A lot of you'll have mock exams coming up, so very, very good revision practice. So as you can see on the screen, we're going to start with a 30-second challenge. So get your phones ready to bob your comments into the chat. So 30-second challenge, what are the three main types of delegated legislation? So if you asked about the three types, what do you think the examiner is asking for? So your 30 seconds starts now. three main types. Fantastic. Right, so we've got some excellent answers in the chat here. Too many for me to go through, but let's just double check, see what we've got. So Ty's come up with orders in council bylaws, good. Yeah. But fly the same. Katerina, excellent. Good to see you again, Katerina. Yeah, excellent. Perfect. So, yeah, Jim's just bobbed the answers on there. So, well done, everyone. That's the first hurdle, isn't it? Making sure we get the correct types. So, bylaws, orders in council, and statutory instruments, isn't it? So, very well done. All very fast as well, which is excellent. Perfect. Right, so this one's a little bit of a muddle up, really, a categorise activity for you. So you've got 60 seconds for this one, a little bit longer. You've got the three types of delegated legislation at the top there, and then you've got numbers 1 to 8. So all I want you to do is to work out which numbers are going to match the type of delegated legislation. You'd probably be best off in the chat putting the numbers and then which letter at the side, B for bylaw, O for order in council, or S for statutory instruments. Okay, so 60 seconds starts now. So which ones are for bylaws? Which ones are for statutory instruments? Good, we've got some in there already. So Escher bylaw number 5, perfect. Do you have any more? Got one there. Yeah, good, Katerina. Yeah. Zini. Hi, Zini. Just on time. Look at that. Probably could have done with a few more seconds, couldn't you? Well done for these guys that have got these answers in there. Right, let's just double check then that we've got the right ones. So, yeah, 6 and 5 is for bylaws. So, well done, Casey. Well done, everybody above. Escher's got it. So, they are made by local councils, aren't they? Or corporations, companies that will govern that area. And it's really key, isn't it, that they've got the local knowledge. That's why they're the better people. If you think about your local council, they're the better people to make the laws in your local area, aren't they? So, very well done for 6 and 5. Orders in council had 3 then. So, we've got the Queen and Privy Council, which Zini's got in there. So, well done, Casey. He's got in there. There's a few higher up as well. Well done, Katerina's got it. Yes, definitely in emergencies, but also doesn't have to be a national emergency, does it? It can just be if we need to do something fast. They're the best ones to do because they take a matter of days. And yes, any form of war, terrorism, diseases, anything we need to react to quickly is the best way for the monarchy to be able to get involved there. So well done, 3, 7 and 1. And then statutory instruments, you've got 4, 8 and 2, haven't you? So you've got your ministers involved here. We have procedures that we go through, don't we? So affirmative, if Parliament gets to have a quick vote on it. Negative, we have it temporarily law for 40 days. And a really good example would be obviously what's happened with the COVID regulations, face coverings, obviously coming from Matt Hancock when he was the health minister there. Really key to be able to use those examples. So very well done, everyone. Quite a lot to do there in that 60 seconds, but we've managed to categorise them into the right order. Fantastic. So we wanted to give you a little bit of exam gold here, regardless of whether you're just studying AQA law, OCR law. We want, or even WeJet, wanted to make sure that you had some form of exam gold in order to maximise those marks. I have just mentioned it briefly, but the examples are really key for the types of delegated legislation. Everyone can say this is what it is and this is who makes it, but your explanations as to why they're making it are really good examples to show. I tried to sort of cover two maybe for each in a question. Two example ministers that would make statutory instruments, two example laws that the Queen would have to get involved with if it was an emergency or something we needed to do fast, and then two bylaw examples that you could show. Even if one's a corporation and one's a council, that's fine, but the examples are going to be really, really key there, and that explanation as to why is it so important that an expert minister would make it rather than just giving it to Parliament to legislate on generally. So just a little bit of a tip there for your mocks and the real thing. As we've said there, and we've underlined it, the type of deleg, which you've all done fantastic, who's making it, why they're making it, and these examples. Right, so one of my favourite activities. So I'd like to do this as a picture activity here. So you'll notice you've got quite a lot of pictures on there, numbered 1 to 10. And you'll probably guess it because you can see at the bottom. All I want you to do is work out what type of delegated legislation would we need in that situation. Would it be A, an order in council? Would it be B, a bylaw? Or would it be C, a statutory instrument? Okay, so linking your numbers up to the letter. So again, it's up to you whether you just wanted to do A dash and then all the ones that could be an order in council, B dash all the ones that could be bylaw, and C for statutory instruments, or whether you want to do it by numbers. It's completely up to you. Okay, but you've got a variety of images there. And what do you think we would use? Okay, oh, Isle of Skye's got straight in there. So again, I'll give you a minute or two to have a go at that one. Off we go. So Isle of Skye's saying 1 and 6 for Honour in Council. So you're right with number 1. Potentially number 6 could be another one, couldn't it? Possibly Order in Council, but possibly something else if it's to do with regulating diseases. What did we pass a lot of last year with COVID? Butterflies come straight in there. 1 and 6, B. We've got 9 for B. Yes, good. Statutory instruments. Yeah. Well done. Bit more of a thinking process, this, isn't it? With the fact it's a bit like Pictionary. Sascan, Order in Council, number 5. Yeah, because we need to pass a EULAW fast, don't we? So I'll give you guys another minute. No one's picked on number 8 yet, or number 4. So if you can have a potential look at 8 and 4. Asher, you're in there. Statutory instruments. Yeah, 7, 8, 9. Good there. Tie. Zini. 1, 5 and 6. You could potentially Isle of Skye for bylaw, but also think who else could do it. But probably going to be more of a bylaw situation, but you could potentially link in 2. Well done, Jim. You've got a question right there. Excellent. Right, let's have a look then. We've got some fantastic answers here. Very well done. So you can see that the letters are moving across now. So yes, number 1, obviously it's relating to war and terrorism, that isn't it? So yes, you're going to use an order in council for that situation. Police powers, generally statutory instruments. So well done those that got that, because sometimes people come up with different. But yeah, you'll have your Justice Minister getting involved in police powers. Road traffic, yeah, everyone seemed to get that one, didn't they? It's going to be Transport Minister. Same for number 4. We could potentially use the Transport Minister there. I would probably credit you, though, if you did potentially say bylaw as well for number 4, because we can use it as a corporation example, can't we? We can talk about the fact that Network Rail would be able to potentially set their rules on behaviour and things that we do on trains. So if you did say B for number 4 as well, that's correct. EU law, we need to do fast, or we did need to do fast so that we didn't get fined. Yes, you all got that one right for number 6, didn't we? Something fast we would need to produce for diseases, but also potentially we've got their statutory instruments as well. 7, 8, 9, yeah, are all your bylaws, aren't there? Local issues, and then finishing with education. So, yes, perfect. Very well done, everyone. Right, I'm going to pass you over now to Emily.
Thanks very much. Well done, everyone. You've been doing really well so far, so let's try and keep it up for the controls. There are two types of controls that govern delegated legislation. These are parliamentary and then court controls. Just something to be aware of with court controls is that in an exam question, they could be referred to as judicial controls or controls by the court. Don't let that put you off. It means the exact same thing. It's just something to bear in mind. All right, we're going to start this section off with a 30-second challenge. So we're going to start with the first type of controls, which is parliamentary controls. And as the challenge says, I just want you to list as many as you can. There are 3 main ones though. So let's have 30 seconds on the clock. Off you go. Last few seconds. And that's it, time's up. Well done. Yeah, we've got committees in there, we've got affirmative and negative resolution procedure. Fantastic, well done. There we go, I was waiting for the Enabling Act. Yep, the Enabling Act. That is your main one. Of course, that's the one that Parliament states the intentions in. So it states 3 things: who can make the delegated legislation, the area that it can be made in, for instance, education, and then finally the procedures that must be followed. Bear that in mind later on. Yes, well done. Everybody's got these now. I think once you get one of them, you kind of remember the rest of them. So yeah, you do have the Enabling Act, and then affirmative and negative resolution procedure, and finally scrutiny committees. The Enabling Act, like I say, I've already gone through. The resolution procedures are affirmative and negative resolution procedure. Affirmative resolution procedure is where the delegated legislation needs to be approved by one or both houses of Parliament before it can actually become a law. Whereas with the negative resolution procedure, after 40 days, the legislation just automatically becomes law, unless somebody, for instance, an MP or Lord, raises that as an issue and wants to have a debate and challenge it in Parliament. The scrutiny committees include the Delegated Powers Scrutiny Committee, which is the watchdog for all delegated legislation, but then you have other mini ones that are just focused on, say, bylaws, for instance. Well done. Let's move on to the next activity. We're going to now look at the court controls over delegated legislation, which, remember, can also be called judicial controls. Don't let that put you off. It means the exact same thing. Let's have 30 seconds on the clock. Off you go. Last few seconds. All right, well done. Wow, okay. Saskan, you've gone above and beyond there. That's brilliant. Okay. The main control would be judicial review. All right, that's essentially the court controls or the judicial controls of delegated legislation. In relation to that, you've got types of ultra vires that the judge can declare the delegated legislation to be. So yeah, we've all mentioned these, which is brilliant. Ultra vires means beyond the powers. That's one of the many, many Latin phrases that you learn in law. I know people say that Latin is dead, but we all know that's not true. And then yes, you've got the 3 types. So you've got substantive ultra vires, which is where the delegated legislation is allowed for something that Parliament hasn't intended. So your key case there would be customs and excise versus Cure and Dealey, although your teacher might have given you a different one, which is fine. Alternatively, the procedural ultra vires is where the procedure hasn't been followed that Parliament has stated in the Enabling Act. And your example there could be the Aylesbury Mushroom Growers Association case. And then for unreasonableness, you could use the case of Strickland v Haysborough Council, where they tried to ban swearing and things like that in the street, which was considered unreasonable. Very, very good answers. Well done. So yes, if the judicial review considers the delegated legislation to be ultra vires, the delegated legislation therefore gets declared void and is essentially no longer a law. Very well done, everyone. So this is just the parliamentary controls, a little bit more detail. As we say, the Enabling Act is your main one. This is the thing that Parliament set out, and it's the thing that grants the power to another person, another body, to create that delegated legislation. It'll state three things: who can create it, the area that it can be made in, and the procedures that must be followed. And if any of those aren't adhered to, that's when a judicial review can come in, and the delegated legislation can be challenged via that. The two resolution procedures are affirmative and negative resolution. Affirmative resolution involves the delegated legislation having to be approved by one or both houses within about 28 to 40 days. For instance, any changes to the Human Rights Act would need to go through that. And then negative resolution procedure, as I say, involves the delegated legislation automatically becoming law after 40 days if it's not challenged. And then, like I say, you've got multiple scrutiny committees. I don't think it's necessary for you to remember every single one, but mentioning a couple of examples, that would be great. For instance, the Delegated Powers Scrutiny Committee. And then we have the court controls. As I've said, judicial controls is the court control. So judicial review is the process by which any person or organisation can challenge a piece of delegated legislation. This happens in the High Court, and it's a High Court judge who would review the delegated legislation. And what they're looking for is to make sure that the delegated legislation is adhering to the Enabling Act. If it's not following the procedures, it would be procedural ultra vires. If it's allowing for something that Parliament didn't intend, it would be declared substantive ultra vires. And then if it was really unreasonable, it would be declared unreasonable ultra vires. And in any of those cases, it would also be declared void. All right, now that we've covered the controls in a bit of depth, we're now going to look at the advantages and disadvantages of delegated legislation. So we're going to start off with the pros. And you're going to get a timer on the screen. Within the time frame, you need to consider or give me 3 examples of advantages of delegated legislation. Obviously, there aren't only 3. Don't assume that just because somebody said something that you haven't thought of that you're wrong. That's not true. There are lots and lots of advantages and disadvantages. I just need you to give me 3. All right, let's get started. Well done. I was going to start giving hints to people, and then people started coming up with loads and loads of answers. Well done. The first one that came through was time saving, so we'll start with that one. Yes, it does save Parliament time. They only sit for 30 weeks a year, and so there are 2 issues with that. Thank you. There are 2 issues with that. First of all, Parliament just don't have the time to create every single law that is necessary for the country to run effectively. It doesn't make sense for Parliament to be making laws that only affect one local area, all right? The other issue is that they might not be sitting when an emergency occurs. It's much easier for an order in council to be made quickly rather than having to wait for all of the members of Parliament to get there in order to try and push through an Act of Parliament quickly. Other people have said that it's useful in times of emergencies. That is brilliant and definitely links in with that advantage. Specifically, you would talk about orders in council there, and again compare how fast they can be made compared to an Act of Parliament, which takes on average about 153 days. So yeah, much more time saving and not as time consuming as a law made by Parliament. The other thing is that it's flexible. As we've said, it can be made in times of emergency where Parliament aren't in sitting, which is brilliant, but also it can be made to only affect local areas. That is obviously very unlike an Act of Parliament, which generally when they're made, they affect the whole country. Obviously there are different types of bills, so there are some that only affect a certain area, but it's much easier to just make a bylaw and therefore affect only a small area. And again, in relation to the flexible advantage, they can also be used to simply add or update existing legislation. So rather than Parliament having to scrap an Act of Parliament and then start from scratch, what can happen is a statutory instrument, for instance, can be used to just add on a little bit of detail. For instance, with the Dangerous Dogs Act, the Home Secretary can add breeds of dog to it via a statutory instrument if she wanted to. Hasn't happened yet, but it's got the flexibility to allow her to do that. And then finally, there are different types of knowledge which makes delegated legislation more appropriate than law made by Parliament for some situations. Bylaws, for instance, require specialist local knowledge. Parliament, when they're down in London, especially if they're not from the area, would not necessarily know what laws are necessary for Stockton Borough Council or the High Street in Hartlepool, for instance. It's not something that everybody is going to be aware of, and so it makes sense for somebody with specialist local knowledge to create that law. And then you've also got issues with the fact that not everybody in Parliament has technical knowledge and technical expertise. So some laws require that type of expertise, and it makes sense to pass the power to those people to do that. Right. What we're going to do now is the same thing again, so same activity, but this time we're going to obviously concentrate on disadvantages rather than advantages. So you've got the same amount of time, and I need the same amount of disadvantages this time. Off you go when you're ready. Wow, that was brilliant. Again, I was just about to start giving hints and then everybody was coming through with all of their answers. I'm just reading through them all now. No public involvement, yeah, electoral authorities, lack of... Some really good examples and like actual statistics included here, which is fantastic. Very well done, everyone. All right, let's go through each one. So the first issue is that there isn't enough scrutiny. A few of you have mentioned this. Those people that are creating it are, first of all, not necessarily elected, which we're going to come to in a second, but also those people that are creating it are maybe aware that the delegated legislation isn't going to get scrutinised very heavily, and so may use that as an opportunity to pass a law that perhaps benefits them and their friends, knowing that that wouldn't be something that people would pick up on or necessarily scrutinise very heavily. It also allows for poor quality laws to get passed, which a couple of you have mentioned. And then also, specifically, I don't know if anybody's mentioned this point actually, just reading through, with negative resolution procedure, a piece of delegated legislation can automatically become law after 40 days if nobody raises it as a concern or challenges it. And so that means that, like I say, a poor quality law can get passed. A few people have also mentioned the issue of it being undemocratic, and that's because of the involvement of people who create delegated legislation not being elected. For instance, there are lots of members of the Privy Council, such as judges, members of the royal family, who are not elected, and so those people having an influence on lawmaking and laws that affect the general public is not democratic. And then also, if it does need to be challenged because it's been created without adhering to the Enabling Act, it does cost money, and it might be that an organisation or an individual has to use their own money to challenge that piece of delegated legislation in the High Court. And that's not something that should happen. It should be scrutinised heavily enough that it doesn't need to be challenged. But as you've all mentioned, there is not necessarily a proper control system, and so that's the problem. Very, very well done. You've really impressed me on those advantages and disadvantages there tonight. So you should be very proud of yourselves that you know all of that. Just want to finish off with maybe one more disadvantage that a couple of people mentioned there, and that was the volume of delegated legislation makes it so difficult for proper scrutiny to occur, but then also the fact that it's hard for the public to keep up with the delegated legislation as well. All right. Very well done. Really impressed with everybody tonight. You should feel very proud of yourselves.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic session.
Yeah.
Amazing students' responses, weren't they?
Yes,
no need for any hints tonight.
No, on fire.
I've just stuck a Latin phrase into the live chat, Emily and Rabina. I know you'll know what it means. It's Latin for great session tonight. Great session tonight.
Yeah, very well done, everyone.
I studied Latin and Greek at school. Didn't really do it justice. Didn't really study hard, and to be honest with you, ever since then it's been my Achilles elbow. So There we go. Fantastic stuff. What an amazing session. 30 minutes on delegated legislation. And I guess just picking up some of your comments there, Rabina, Emily, it's having the examples as well, isn't it? To
Yes.
back up the different categories there. Absolutely vital.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, well done, because you've got very good examples in there of the types, of the controls, and they're your sort of two main areas, aren't they, Emily? So fantastic for this.
Many thanks to everyone who's joined us live. We've had big numbers tonight, which is fantastic. And we know that hundreds of students catch up on these sessions outside of the live session. So hopefully you've enjoyed it too. If you have, give us a thumbs up on YouTube, because that helps. Firstly, Emily and Rabina get paid by the thumbs up. And secondly, so please don't do that. And secondly, it helps YouTube suggest this session and others like it to other A-level law students. So that's really helpful. Don't forget, Rabina and Emily and Dan and Sarah and Liz and the team have done lots of these sessions now in 2021. So if you've got some assessments coming up or some mocks, maybe just after Christmas, might be worth going to tutor2u.net/live, go to the replay section and just select law from the drop down. Obviously lots of other subjects on there now. There's about 320 sessions, but select law, and there are some fantastic revision activities and sessions if you want to maybe just mix up your revision before assessments and mocks. I think we've covered a lot, haven't we? Not everything, but still lots more to come.
Yes.
Fantastic. Any final words before we sign off and say goodbye to our live audience?
Good luck if you've got mock exams coming up, I guess.
Yeah, best of luck, and join us next week for some involuntary manslaughter, I think.
Well, that sounds like that's not to be missed. So it's a regular slot on a Tuesday, 6:30 Tuesday for law, A-level law. So spread the word, get your mates involved if they're free for the live. That's fantastic. If not, catch us on the replay section. But for now, and as always, we say a massive thanks to Emily and Rabina. They work really hard teaching throughout the day, putting these amazing sessions together, and then spending some of their precious leisure time before they get back to some marking, doing these sessions. So big thanks to you as well. Okay, we're good to go. We'll see you next time. Well done, everyone.
Well done, everyone.
Bye.